Deep inside a Virginia cave, someone built the largest musical instrument on Earth, entirely out of rock formations that took millions of years to grow. A stretch of West Virginia mountains has been legally off limits to your cell phone signal since the 1950s, on purpose. In 1907, a single explosion under one small mining town killed more people in a few seconds than most modern wars kill in a year. Somewhere in central Appalachia right now, mining companies have blasted the tops clean off more than 500 separate mountains. And somewhere else entirely, unexplained lights have been flickering over the same ridge for over a century, without a single official explanation that actually holds up. Every single thing you're about to hear is real, documented, and still sitting in these hills today, whether anyone's looking at it or not. Appalachia hides more than most people driving through it ever realize. Before we start counting down, go ahead and hit subscribe, because these mountains have a way of rewarding the people who keep coming back for more. And do me a favor and drop a comment telling me exactly where you're watching from, because if you're from these hills, I promise something on this list is about to make you say, "Wait, that's actually true?" out loud to nobody in particular. Let's get into it. Number 50. Cumberland Falls, Kentucky. On clear nights near a full moon, this waterfall produces something called a moonbow, a rainbow made entirely of moonlight instead of sunlight, arching silently over the mist at the base of the falls. It's one of only 2 predictable moonbows anywhere on the entire planet, and the only one in the Western Hemisphere. The other one happens on a different continent at Victoria Falls, thousands of miles away. Number 49. Luray Caverns, Virginia. Inside the largest cave system in the eastern United States sits the Great Stalacpipe Organ, recognized by Guinness as the largest musical instrument on Earth. Its pipes are actual stalactites, gently struck by rubber mallets and wired to a keyboard, spanning 3.5 acres of cave in total. A mathematician spent 3 full years crawling through the dark, hand-picking the exact rock formations that could hold a tune. Number 48. Grandfather Mountain, North Carolina. The mile-high swinging bridge here is the highest suspension footbridge in America, and it earns that height with genuinely dangerous weather to match. Wind gusts on the summit have been officially clocked at over 120 miles an hour. And when those gusts hit the bridge's steel slats just right, the whole structure hums like a harmonica, which is why locals call it the singing bridge instead of the swinging one. Number 47. Brown Mountain, North Carolina. For over a century, people have reported unexplained lights hovering and drifting over this ridge above Linville Gorge. The U.S. Geological Survey actually sent investigators twice, once in 1913 and again in 1922, and both times they packed up and left without a satisfying answer. Trains, gas, lightning, none of the official theories have ever fully explained what people are still filming there today. Number 46. Roan Mountain, straddling the Tennessee-North Carolina line. Its summit holds a grassy bald, a treeless high-elevation meadow that botanists still can't fully explain the existence of, since nothing about the soil or the climate up there should naturally keep the trees out. In the last 100 years, roughly 75% of these open balds have quietly vanished back into forest, so conservationists now literally herd goats up the mountain every summer just to keep the meadows from closing in completely. Number 45. Tallulah Gorge, Georgia. This canyon plunges nearly 1,000 feet through sheer granite walls that formed over 1 billion years ago, making it one of the deepest gorges anywhere east of the Mississippi River. In 1970, the legendary tightrope walker Carl Wallinda crossed the entire open gorge on a wire strung rim to rim, echoing a nearly identical stunt another aerialist had already pulled off back in 1886, nearly a century earlier. Number 44. Whitewater Falls, sitting right on the North Carolina-South Carolina line. Dropping roughly 411 feet in a single plunge, it's widely cited as one of the tallest waterfalls east of the Rocky Mountains, a title a handful of other Appalachian waterfalls still quietly argue about depending on how exactly you measure a drop. Either way, the river descends 1,500 feet total on its way down, crossing a state line twice in the process. Number 43. Stone Mountain, Georgia. Rising 825 feet above the surrounding land, it's the largest single mass of exposed granite in North America, formed roughly 300 million years ago from cooling molten rock deep underground. From a distance, it just looks like a solid gray dome sitting alone on the landscape. Up close, it's a mountain made of one uninterrupted piece of stone, over 4 miles around at the base. Number 42. Lookout Mountain, straddling the Tennessee-Georgia line. From the summit, a historical marker famously claims you can see 7 different states at once on a clear day. Exactly how many you can genuinely pick out with the naked eye is a running debate among visitors. But people have been making that same 7-state claim since soldiers were writing about it in their diaries during the Civil War. Number 41. Natural Tunnel, Virginia. This 850-foot limestone tunnel was carved straight through the middle of a mountain by a small creek over roughly 1 million years, and an active freight railroad still runs full-size trains through it today, right past hikers on the overlook. Visitors once nicknamed it the 8th wonder of the world, and more than a century later, the trains are still rolling through that same wonder on a daily schedule. Number 40. Breaks Interstate Park, straddling the Virginia-Kentucky line. Nicknamed the Grand Canyon of the South, this gorge stretches 5 miles long and plunges as deep as 1,600 feet in places where the Russell Fork River cuts straight through Pine Mountain. It's one of only 2 state parks in the entire country, jointly operated by 2 different states working off a shared compact instead of splitting the land in half. Number 39. Mount Rogers, Virginia. At 5,729 feet, it's the highest natural point in the state, and its high meadows are home to a herd of roughly 120 wild ponies that have grazed those slopes since the 1940s, kept there deliberately to help control the grass. The mountain doesn't just hold the elevation record, it comes with its own free-roaming livestock as a bonus attraction. Number 38. Linville Gorge, North Carolina. Nicknamed the Grand Canyon of the East, it plunges 2,000 feet through some of the most rugged, tangled terrain in the eastern United States. It was one of the very first wilderness areas ever protected under the National Wilderness Act of 1964. And to this day, cell service inside the gorge itself is still close to non-existent, even with towers visible on the surrounding ridgelines. Number 37. Cheaha Mountain, Alabama. At just over 2,400 feet, it's the highest point in the entire state, and more importantly, it marks the southernmost tip of the whole Appalachian mountain chain, the same continuous range that runs all the way north into Canada. The oldest mountain system in North America technically ends or begins, depending on which direction you're walking, in the middle of Alabama farm country. Number 36. Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. A teenage George Washington reportedly bathed in these mineral springs while surveying the area, and the town later built one of the country's first public bathhouses directly over them, earning it the nickname America's First Spa. People have been soaking in essentially the same warm mountain spring water for close to 300 years now, long before the word wellness was ever a marketing term. Number 35, Trout Pond, West Virginia. Tucked into the eastern mountains near the Virginia line, it's the only naturally occurring lake in the entire state. Every other lake in West Virginia, including the big reservoirs people fish, boat, and camp on every summer, was built by humans. The terrain here is so steep and so well drained that, left entirely to itself, nature basically refused to form a lake anywhere in the state on its own. Number 34, Cranberry Glades, West Virginia. This boggy, high-elevation basin behaves almost like Arctic tundra dropped in the middle of Appalachia, cold enough at night that frost has occasionally been recorded even in the middle of summer. Because the ground there is so acidic and so nutrient-poor, some of the plants have actually evolved to trap and slowly digest insects just to survive in soil that offers them almost nothing else. Number 33. Blackwater Falls, West Virginia. The river here runs a deep amber color, stained almost like brewed tea by tannins leaching out of the hemlock forest upstream, before dropping roughly 60 feet over a wall of sandstone cliffs. The entire canyon was clear-cut down to bare ground by loggers back in the 1800s, and it has spent the century since quietly, patiently growing itself back into a forest. Number 32. The Cheat River Canyon, West Virginia. In places, its walls rise more than 1,000 feet straight above the water, and for generations the terrain was so steep and so roadless that entire sections were nearly impossible for anyone outside the immediate area to reach on foot. It wasn't a park ranger or a protection law that kept this canyon wild for so long. It was simply the terrain refusing to let people in. Number 31. Ice Mountain, West Virginia. A massive slope of loose, tumbled boulders here traps winter cold so effectively that cool air keeps venting out of roughly 60 small openings well into the heart of summer, occasionally with actual pockets of ice still packed underneath the rocks. For generations, local kids used to hike up in the middle of July specifically to grab handfuls of ice for homemade ice cream, treating the mountain like nature's own corner freezer. Number 30. The Horseshoe Curve, near Altoona, Pennsylvania. Built back in 1854 to help steam trains climb the steep grade of the Alleghenies without tunneling straight through the mountain, it became such a critical artery of American rail traffic that in 1942, 8 Nazi saboteurs landed by U-boat on a Long Island beach with direct orders to blow it up. The entire plot collapsed almost immediately after one of the 8 saboteurs quietly turned himself in to the FBI. Number 29. The Appalachian Trail, running the full length of the range itself. Stretching roughly 2,200 miles from Georgia all the way to Maine through 14 different states. It's officially the longest hiking-only footpath anywhere in the world. Around 3,000 people attempt to walk the entire thing in one continuous push every single year, and only about 1 in 4 of them actually make it all the way to the end. Number 28. Spruce Knob, West Virginia. At 4,863 feet, it's not just the highest point in the state, it's the highest point in the entire Allegheny mountain range, which stretches across 4 separate states. The trees on the exposed summit grow permanently bent sideways, sculpted over decades by wind that essentially never stops blowing hard enough to notice. Number 27. Seneca Rocks, West Virginia. This razorback ridge of white quartzite rises over 900 feet almost straight out of the valley floor, thin enough in places to look like a shark fin cutting up through the trees. It's the only rock formation on the entire East Coast where the true summit can only be reached with technical climbing gear, since no walking trail actually goes all the way to the top. Number 26. Green Bank, West Virginia. This small town sits inside a 13,000 square mile zone where Wi-Fi routers and cell service are legally restricted by federal law, all to protect the world's largest fully steerable radio telescope from stray electronic interference. A whole pocket of American mountains chose deliberately to stay disconnected from the modern world just so one enormous dish could keep listening to the stars in peace. If any of this has genuinely surprised you so far, go ahead and hit subscribe right now, because the second half of this list is where locals really start arguing with each other in the comments. Let's keep going. Number 25. The New River Gorge, West Virginia. Despite the confusing name, geologists consider the New River to be one of the oldest rivers on the entire planet, with some estimates placing it at over 200 million years old, meaning it was already ancient before the first dinosaurs walked the earth. It has carved a gorge that plunges 1,600 feet straight down into solid rock. They named the oldest river on the continent New, which might be the greatest branding mistake in American geography. Number 24. The New River Gorge Bridge, spanning that same canyon. At 876 feet above the river below, it held the world record for the longest single-span steel arch bridge for 26 straight years, after opening in 1977. Every October, the bridge closes to traffic entirely, so nearly 200,000 people can walk out onto it and watch base jumpers leap off the deck for a single wild day, called Bridge Day. Number 23. Dolly Sods, West Virginia. This high, windswept plateau was used by the U.S. Army as an artillery and mortar training ground during World War II, chosen specifically because its rugged terrain resembled the battlefields of Europe. Decades of cleanup sweeps have already removed hundreds of shells, and as recently as October of 2025, hikers reported yet another live World War II-era round that had to be safely disposed of on the spot. Number 22. Shenandoah National Park, Virginia. To build the park and Skyline Drive in the 1930s, the state of Virginia forced out roughly 500 mountain families through eminent domain, people who had lived in these hollows for generations before anyone called it a national park. Their cemeteries still sit scattered throughout the park today, and descendants still drive back in just to visit a grave beside a hiking trail millions of tourists walk every single year. Number 21. The Cumberland Gap, where Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia all meet at once. Daniel Boone led a crew of axemen through this natural break in the mountains in 1775 to cut what became the Wilderness Road. By 1810, somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 settlers had already passed through that one single gap on their way to Kentucky and the Ohio Valley beyond it. Number 20. The Great Smoky Mountains straddling Tennessee and North Carolina. The Cherokee called this range Shacknaj, place of the blue smoke, because the higher ridges stay wrapped in fog almost constantly, fed by annual rainfall that can top 70 inches a year in the wettest stretches. That officially makes it one of the wettest places in the entire southeastern United States, wetter in some years than parts of Florida. Number 19. Mount Mitchell, North Carolina. At 6,684 feet, it's the highest point east of the entire Mississippi River, taller than anything standing in New England. The professor it's named after, Elisha Mitchell, actually died on this mountain in 1857 after falling near a waterfall while trying to personally reconfirm his own measurement of its height. He turned out to be right. It cost him his life to prove it. Number 18. Fontana Lake, North Carolina. When the Tennessee Valley Authority dammed this valley in the 1940s, it drowned entire communities and displaced more than 1,000 families almost overnight. The government promised a new road so residents could still reach their family cemeteries. Construction stopped at a tunnel in the 1960s and simply never resumed. Locals call it the Road to Nowhere, and it's still called that today. Number 17. The Chattooga River, right on the Georgia-South Carolina line. After the movie Deliverance came out in 1972, 50,000 paddlers a year started showing up to run this river, most of them with no whitewater experience at all. 24 of them died within the next 4 years. The river itself never changed. The number of people who assumed a movie qualified them for Class 4 rapids very clearly did. Number 16. The Trail of Tears, cutting directly through the Appalachian Range itself. In the winter of 1838 and 1839, thousands of Cherokee and members of other tribes were forcibly marched hundreds of miles through Tennessee, Kentucky, and the surrounding mountains, and thousands died along the way from cold, disease, and sheer exhaustion. These same ridges people photograph for their fall foliage today were the site of a forced death march less than 200 years ago. Number 15. Devil's Bathtub, Virginia. This narrow, deep swimming hole carved into Devil's Fork looks almost unreal in photographs, and it has drawn repeated water rescues and reported drownings over the years, as inexperienced swimmers underestimate both the current and the shocking cold of the water. The smooth rock ledges around it were built for photographs. The water underneath them was not built with visitors in mind. Number 14. Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. More than 426 miles of passageway have been surveyed underneath this stretch of south-central Kentucky, making it the longest cave system ever documented anywhere on Earth, more than double the length of the next closest system on the entire planet. Park officials genuinely believe hundreds more miles remain completely unmapped beneath the same hills where people are currently pulling in to park for a picnic. Number 13. The Appalachians as a whole. This entire mountain range erodes away at roughly 2 inches every 1,000 years, ground down slowly by wind, ice, and rain for longer than most exposed rock on Earth has existed at all. And yet, geologists believe pressure rising up from deep beneath the crust may be pushing these mountains back upward again even now, meaning the range might technically be eroding and regrowing at the exact same time. Number 12. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. In November of 2016, a small fire that started on a trail called Chimney Tops grew for 5 days inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park before winds gusting past 80 miles an hour finally drove it straight into the edge of the city itself. 14 people died, and roughly 2,500 homes and buildings were damaged or destroyed in a matter of a few chaotic hours. Number 11. The Nolichucky Gorge on the Tennessee-North Carolina line. In September of 2024, Hurricane Helene sent record floodwater tearing through this narrow gorge, ripping out entire sections of a major freight rail line that had run through the canyon for well over a century. It took work crews roughly a full year of rebuilding, through terrain so remote it has no road access at all, only rail, before trains could finally run through the gorge again. Number 10. Asheville, North Carolina. That same storm, Hurricane Helene, killed at least 107 people in North Carolina alone, making it the deadliest storm in the state's modern recorded history. Buncombe County, home to Asheville, absorbed the worst of it, with mountain rivers turning quiet residential neighborhoods into disaster zones in a matter of hours, hundreds of miles inland. in a place most residents genuinely assumed was too far from the coast to ever worry about a hurricane. Number 9. Eastern Kentucky in the summer of 2022. Days of relentless, unrelenting rain sent the North Fork of the Kentucky River to record levels, one river gauge failing entirely near 21 feet, another one setting an all-time record crest above 43 feet, blowing past a mark that had stood since 1939. At least 45 people died across the region, many of them swept away inside homes built along creeks that had never once flooded like that in living memory. Number 8. Buffalo Creek, West Virginia. On the morning of February 26, 1972, a poorly built coal waste dam gave way and released 132 million gallons of black water and mining sludge straight into a narrow mountain hollow. In under 3 hours, it tore through 17 separate communities and killed 125 people. The coal company's own public relations office initially and infamously called the entire disaster an act of God. Number 7. Upper Big Branch, West Virginia. On April 5, 2010, an explosion tore through this coal mine and killed 29 miners in a matter of minutes, the worst American mining disaster in 40 years at the time it happened. Federal investigators later found the company had operated the mine in what one official report bluntly called a profoundly reckless manner, and the company's owner eventually went to prison over it. Number 6. The Hawk's Nest Tunnel, near Gauley Bridge, West Virginia. Between 1930 and 1935, workers drilled a 3-mile tunnel through rock that was nearly pure silica, using dry drilling techniques that filled the air underground with lethal, invisible dust. At least 476 workers, most of them black migrant laborers, died of acute silicosis within 5 years of the project, with some historical estimates running as high as 760 or more. Number 5. Monongah, West Virginia. On December 6, 1907, twin explosions tore through 2 connected coal mines within seconds of each other, killing at least 362 men and boys, though record-keeping was so poor at the time that some historians place the real total closer to 500 lives lost. It remains, more than a century later, the single deadliest mining disaster in the entire history of the United States. Number 4. Black lung disease, spreading through central Appalachia right now, not in some dusty history book. Nearly 1 in 3 veteran underground coal miners in Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia currently test positive for the disease, the highest rate recorded in almost 50 years. Miners today are being diagnosed in numbers not seen since the 1970s, largely because the coal seams still worth mining now require cutting through far more silica-laden rock than ever before. Number 3. Mountaintop removal mining, spread across the coal fields of central Appalachia. Since surface mining accelerated in the 1970s, more than 500 individual mountains and over 1 million acres of Appalachian terrain have been blasted apart with explosives and leveled with heavy machinery, burying nearly 2,000 miles of natural streams under the leftover waste rock in the process. Number 2. That same reshaping of the land has left parts of southern West Virginia, according to researchers at Duke University, on average 40% flatter than they were before extraction ever began there. A mountain range that took over 1 billion years of geologic patience to build has been visibly, measurably reshaped by human industry in a matter of decades, not eons. Number 1. Put all of it together. And the real story of these mountains isn't any single cave, waterfall, or disaster sitting on this list. It's that Appalachia is simultaneously one of the oldest, most stable landscapes on the planet, and one of the fastest changing landscapes in the entire country. Sometimes on the very same mountain, sometimes within the very same year. The rock itself has always been patient. The people living on top of it, for better and for worse, generation after generation, have never really had that luxury. So that's the list, the full 50 of it, from a moonbow in Kentucky to a mountain range that's quietly disappearing in real time. If your corner of these mountains showed up somewhere on here tonight, or if you think we genuinely left something important out, say so in the comments, because that's honestly how future lists on this channel get built from here. Tell me where you're from. Tell me what these mountains are quietly hiding near you that nobody outside your own valley ever really talks about. And tell me which one of these 50 you're most surprised nobody had told you about before today. If you want more of this kind of thing, real geography, real history, no filler, go ahead and subscribe before you head out. These mountains have been standing for well over 1 billion years. They're not going anywhere, and neither are we.